talks about the Ganga and so on. There are ecological protests that may have Hindu right-wing elements hanging around. Will that stop us from being part of ecological movements? We have to remember that they cannot contaminate our protests. We will contaminate them. We have to work like that. The fact that there is a large green and left presence in, let's say, ecological movement should contaminate the Hindu right. A small group of Hindu right, but our old left way of thinking is, if there are even two Hindu right-wing people here, we'll move away. And we are, as if we are contaminated by them. No, we are the contaminants. We will contaminate this kind of politics with our kind of politics, which is proud of its impurity. There is nothing to be proud of in being pure. Purity is sterile. It is impurity that produces life. It's impurity that produces joy. So, we will contaminate you. We will contaminate you, you know. So, I think we need to recognize the kind of left idea that everyone should always be raising every issue is deeply problematic. It is, of course, another matter that most of the young people who are kissing or fighting against love jihad were also on Trilokpuri. They're also in Manesar with the Maruti workers. They're also in the Narmada Valley. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. We are not just kissing. We're also kissing. I think it's a good thing. But we are not, it's not about kissing. They have politicized kissing, so be it. We shall kiss as a political act. And so I think perhaps I'll just stop here and then Rajarshi will speak, and I mean I would really hope that some of you who have organized and been there and so on would like to talk about it. And if any of you feel uncomfortable about this form of protest, I'd like to hear that voice as well. I'd like to hear that voice as well. So I just want to conclude with this idea that there are, that we need to recognize that the new mode in the ways in which the world will be continually transformed, because I think we know now that there won't be one moment of absolute transformation. There will be continuous transformations, and at every moment some new interests will arise, new identities will arise, new challenges will arise, and that's going to keep happening. And in this new world there will be nodes of protest. We will march together on something and not march together on other things. For example, I was speaking to some young students of AUD, and they were talking about the queer pride that's coming up on the 30th, and unfortunately I'm not in town, but this is one queer pride which has to be phenomenally huge, and it has to be huge, and it has to be a slap in the faces of the Hindu right, and every right. Not that queer politics is beloved of the Muslim right or the Christian right. So we have to be there. Unfortunately, I won't be in Delhi, but I was talking to them about that, and she, for instance, so this young woman said, I'm from the, I'd like a sip of water. I'm from the LGBT community, and I'm not comfortable about marching with some of my friends who believe in and who are asking for marriage equality. She said, I think marriage is a heterosexist institution, and I don't support their demand, and I feel uncomfortable marching with them. So this is what so my response, of course, was, but you march with them and you carry your banner which says marriage is a heterosexist institution. We have to, all these colors are part of the queer movement, and I don't, while I think a heterosexual marriage is a marriage, a homosexual marriage has the power to shake the field of signification to some extent. And if gay and lesbian people want the advantages, because there are legal and cultural advantages to being married in this society, in this highly marriage-driven society where marriage is actually compulsory, as you know, it is compulsory. Come on, it's not when will you get married, it's not will you get married, it's when will you get married. And not just here, all over the world. All over the world they show their faith in the institution of marriage by marrying again and again and again. One marriage breaks up, learn your lesson, move on. your faith in the institution of marriage. Because you're saying it didn't work that time, it'll work this time, right? So anyhow, I know younger people, and especially here, and there are all kinds of pressures, and people also have to marry because there's no other way of living together easily. I understand that. But I'm saying that when that young woman said that I don't want to go to the queer pride, or I don't want to march with them, my response was this, that you may not want to attend their marriage. You may not. I will, if I'm invited. I don't normally go to weddings, but I will certainly go to as someone apparently said, I want my Yash Raj moment. I might go to a Yash Raj lesbian wedding because I want to see that wedding. I want to be there. I want to throw flowers on them or do whatever it is that they do at Yash Raj weddings, you know. But if she didn't feel like doing it, she need not go to the wedding. But in a public space, every queer voice has to be there. The polyamory, the chaste queer person, the asexual queer person, the wanting to marry queer person, the people who want to be with queer people, we should all be there on the 30th, right? Now, so that's what I mean by roles of protest. We don't all coagulate together around one center. There are multiple centers. There will be multiple centers. And through these multiple centers, we will muddy the waters of the famous lotus pond. And we will wear those lotuses in our hair as we kiss in public.
It's a tall order speaking after Nivedita, as many of you know. I wanted to begin today by kissing her and saying this is not a kiss. But she stole my hand. So, we are talking about the recent Peace of Love protest, and as Nivedita explained, it can be placed in a larger background and the possibility of emergence of new forms of politics. Some of us can see a larger connection between the protest in Kerala, in West Bengal. Some of us can see a connection with the protest in Hong Kong, the occupation movement, series of urban unrest that go back to Cairo and Greece. By the way, let me quickly give a word of warning that now that I've got myself a bit of a captive audience, I'm going to subject you to, something like an experiment. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Nivedita said there are those who find these new protests elitist, vacuous, empty of serious social content, and radical in a fake manner. And this is coming from a fairly serious kind of a segment. And I think that we need to take this seriously. This opposition and criticism of forms of protest like Kiss of Love, it comes from a social conservatism that is all the more difficult to tackle because it is enmeshed very deeply with traditions of left politics, which trusts certain forms of working class politics and which forms of politics directly criticizes capitalism. And this is precisely what these segments are finding missing in the new forms of politics that are emerging, which deal with problems, according to these segments, that are distant from the ordinary people and which employ forms that need a certain amount of social capital, cultural capital to participate. Now, Nivedita has spoken eloquently about the question of sexuality, why that question is so intensely political today. And rather than going more in that area, which is a veritable minefield, I would want to actually deal a little with the criticisms that are coming from a very, very strong left segment of politics about these new forms of protest, be it the Hope Cholera protest, be it the Kiss of Love protest in Kochi, and what came up here. I think, what I'll try, without differing substantively from what Nivedita has spoken, is to address the concerns of the critiques and the opponents of this movement. Because I think that they are potential partakers in the movement. And it is important to engage with them precisely because I feel that there is a way in which we can talk about this as having to do with the question of working class and capitalism. And I believe that there are serious issues about the nature of this opposition that involves a misunderstanding of this reality, which is being addressed by the protesters. Therefore, what I'm suggesting is that it is possible to think of this reality, whose experience is provoking protests like Kiss of Love, as having to do very much about capitalism and working class existence. But we will need to fundamentally rethink certain categories, and we need to be ready to reinterpret certain social phenomena in order to be able to perceive this connection. Now let me make this point in some detail because there has been some debate on this issue. There are lots of misgivings, and let me also unpack the argument so that you can get more ammunition to refute my argument when and if you find necessary. See, the first thing I think that emerges like a signal from these kind of movements is a necessity to rethink what we really mean by work or labor. Okay. Now, I am not going into finer distinctions made by philosophers between these two words. There are thinkers who do that, but I am talking about it in an interchangeable sense. The predominant way in which we think about work or labor is to think about the process of production in a factory, right? We can think of, I think one of the most easy examples is to think about the film Modern Times by Charlie Chaplin, okay, which shows rows of workers who are doing repetitive motions standing before a conveyor belt and who are becoming parts of the machine itself. Now this is, of course, the correct image of work in what is called the Fordist mode of production. But it is very important to realize that this mode of production does not dominate the economy today. What dominates our economy to a large extent, and what is right before us, are, let us say, people working as security guards, people working as shopping assistants, working as salesperson, petty salespersons, working in home delivery services, as call center employees, working in the hospitality sector, etc. Right? But even when some of us try to behave with these people, when we meet them in a human manner, I think we are not still thinking of these people as the working class. We are not noticing that the person who's driving back and forth from the outlet to customers with polite greetings for hours is someone very much like Charlie Chaplin in the film Modern Times. And I think this is important to recognize that these people are workers. Because if theoretical concepts have to enjoy a practical relevance, it can only be because they help us to make sense of the reality around us and not otherwise. I think also that it is necessary for us to rethink what is work for a number of other reasons too. Now, I will try to tell you three most pressing reasons that seem to me important at this moment. First, there is a scientific need to rethink what one means by work and by extension, what one understands as working class for two important reasons. One, how to engage with the question of domestic labor and the unrecognized work by countless women in the institution called family. Now, if we think about the family and the work that women do, then I think that a little thought is enough to make us realize how different and distinctive are the forms of work or functions that are performed by women every day. which do not resemble work on a factory floor, but which are nevertheless extremely intensive and exhaustive work. In fact, such work involves precisely what we are given to or used to think as lying outside work, which is taking care or loving. There is a need to realize that that too has a dimension of work for a woman in a domestic space. But if we hold on to the factory image of work, there is just no way we'll be able to tackle this reality. Second, which is again an extremely important question, flagged more than once by Nivi, how to engage with the history of purity and pollution, ritual and exclusion, which are inseparable from our specific social experience of life and work. What is the value of labor, let us say, that is performed by a scavenger? And which is the class that we will say belongs to her? Now, if this also has to be the working class, then the working class certainly needs to be reconfigured, because we are not used to thinking about the working class in these terms. There is a third reason also, which is about, I think, cultivating a habit every time we think of labor, especially today, which is, whenever we are thinking labor, it becomes important to simultaneously think about what certain Marxists have described as simply the division of labor, and more specifically, the socio-technical division of labor. So this is a bit of a cryptic point, just stay with me. The implication of this is that it is not necessary to think of one sociological group permanently as the elite and another sociological group permanently as the subaltern or the working class. Because one group is elite specifically in relation to another group. It is quite likely that the security guards we see could be perceived as elite compared to the casual laborer. The JNU student can very well be seen as elite compared to someone from a college in, let us say, the small town of Bardhaman. The call center employee may be seen as elite compared to a middle class housewife. And at the same time, all of them can and do belong to different strata of workers, part of what we may at least loosely call a working class in a wide sense.